ABCs. You're not ready. Hold us. Okay. What? A is for arrow and ace. B is for bi. This is crazy. We're gay, but this is crazy. What? For a baby?
Did you see that? The ABCs, it was like B is for bi, C is for coming out, D is for drag. Hey everybody, welcome back to Voices with Vicky, and today we're going to be talking about the gender-affirming care scandal involving minors. I predicted for a while that this whole scandal was going to slowly start to wind down and be rolled back, and we were no longer going to be seeing this normalized, and people were going to start realizing just how dangerous this has been for young people, and that it basically needs to be outlawed because it has gotten so out of control and done way more harm than good and hurt a lot of young people. But before we get started, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for all the support. If you do not know who I am, my name is Vicky. I host Voices with Vicky. I cover controversial topics from LGBT, pop culture, and much more. If that sounds like something that interests you, please go ahead and subscribe, give a like, give a share. Okay, so this whole gender-affirming care thing, ever since Trump got into office, he has really spearheaded, I think, highlighting the actual problems with this model and the people that it's hurt. I believe that he ran quite heavily on this when he campaigned because he began to see exactly how broad this problem was and how many people were concerned about it across the United States, so that they were already starting to roll back a lot of these changes over in the UK. So where did this all start? How did this become so quickly normalized? From a high-level perspective, I think it was Jazz Jennings. If you remember Jazz Jennings, she starred on a television documentary series on TLC called I Am Jazz. And it basically just documented her transition from like the age of 4 all the way up till now. And there were so many things about that show and so many red flags with that family and with the situation and the doctors. And it kind of all just went over everybody's head at the time, or I think people wanted to believe that this was actually a thing. Or when you look back on that show, I don't know if you've ever tried to rewatch that series, but I have rewatched it in full. And boy, oh boy, was it actually very eye-opening and scary. There is a particular episode called Farewell to Penis.
I want to throw a farewell to penis party. For you. So long, farewell. I want to do this. This sounds so fun.
So you're comfortable with this?
Yeah, are you kidding? It's so fun. Maybe I should write a little eulogy to my penis. Yeah. I even named you Caterpillar. That's what I named him.
So you're gonna have a naming for your
vagina?
Yeah.
If it's Caterpillar, then I gotta name my Butterfly.
I mean, what the is that? I mean, I'm sorry, but how inappropriate, number one. And you're talking about a young person's healthy body parts. Let's talk about what's the current atmosphere regarding this gender-affirming care. And I call it care because it's really not. It's basically experimental surgeries, hormones, drugs, therapies that long-term we don't have any of the answers for. We don't know what's going to happen. But what we've seen so far has been very negative, which is why we've seen such a spike in detransitioners and people coming out and telling their stories about what's really going on behind the scenes. So let's react to a couple of videos and kind of talk about things as we go. So much like the whole Jazz Jennings thing, this is another example of what they were doing and how they used to frame gender-affirming care as being so life-saving.
Dr. Olson had a decision.
You are in the perfect place to start on blockers.
And she promises to begin giving her estrogen, female hormones, in 2 years.
Around 13. That's what I think. Yes, you're not going to develop breast buds on the blockers, but you're not going to wait until 16 to start. You know that, okay?
Josie received the blockers as an implant in her arm.
It's okay if you cry.
So what they're doing here, if you guys aren't aware, this isn't pausing puberty. This is stopping your puberty. This is preventing this young person from going through a very natural occurring process that every human being on the planet goes through. And they are stopping that process by putting that implant into this child and giving them Lupron. Okay, so that's what's happening here. This isn't like, this is an experiment. This isn't something that we know much about at all, especially when used in this setting. So keep that in mind.
So with all the bravery she could muster,
Now you're going to feel a little bit of a
Josie held on tight
stinging one. That part's
as another chapter opened in this young girl's life.
closing up the skin.
A lot of times it strikes me that had this happened just 20 years ago,
Thank you.
I wouldn't have been able to give her blockers and she would have had to go through male puberty.
If this had happened 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to give her blockers and she would have had to go through male puberty. Like, that's such a terrible thing. Where did we get this idea that a child going through normal puberty is bad? You know, I don't want to hear it about precocious puberty because even that is debatable about whether or not anything actually needs to be done about that.
That terrifies me. It's all done. Do you want a hug? I don't know that she would have survived male puberty.
What? Like, I'm assuming that what she means by that is she would have moved to unalive herself. She would have moved to do something terrible to herself if she didn't go through this instead. But as we have discussed before and we've looked into before and we've talked about before, this whole idea, there is no evidence, real concrete evidence that people, really young kids, are actually, deleting themselves over not getting gender affirming care. I think that there's definitely a suicidal ideation issue within, across the board, and that we're becoming more and more depressed as a society and as a culture every year for other reasons. There's a lot of things happening in the world, but it certainly does not revolve around this. I think this is a big money-making scam, and that they are convincing parents and coercing parents into believing that this is the right choice to make because they're making statements like, would you rather have a dead daughter or a transgendered son? It's actually very, very manipulative and like an emotional entrapment. And in this next clip, we're going to look at somebody called the Truthful Therapist. I actually follow her over on Instagram and X. And I believe Buck Angel has interviewed her before, and she is just absolutely great and based and tells it like it is for real, as someone who is a therapist and knows what goes on behind the curtain with all of this. So take a look at what she says here.
According to NPR, transgender and non-binary people are up to 6 times more likely to have autism. This intersection has researchers trying to understand the mystery of this connection. The article even interviews a 37-year-old non-binary autistic woman.
It's because I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, dude, seriously? People with autism at times are more convinced of things like this. And also they have sometimes a lot of issues with their bodies and feeling comfortable with themselves. So they're very attracted to things like this that create an illusion of being a solution.
Who admits that everyone seemed to have this social handbook that she never understood, and becoming non-binary was a relief. There's stuff like this all over the internet. Look up there in the corner. They snuck that.
I gotta bring that back where they're looking at these objects. What are these things? Normalized sensory needs for children and adults. Yeah, they throw in those headphones at the top that have the little LGBT rainbow
in the corner. They snuck that little thing in there. I wonder if having your own autistic trans flag has any influence at all. But according to NPR, researchers are still working hard, and it's a complete mystery.
It's not a mystery, guys, at all. I mean, obviously, people with other comorbidities are being captured by this ideology, which is another reason why it needs to be stopped, especially when they're taking it as far as giving children surgeries and Lupron and cross-sex hormones. Like, are you freaking kidding me right now? I'm especially concerned for young people, young women, young girls who are getting their breasts removed. And at 14, 15, 16 years old, and then later on when they become an adult and realize, hey, guess what? You're never going to breastfeed. Hey, guess what? You're never going to have breasts again unless you get implants. And those aren't the same thing. Those aren't breasts. And people are saying that you're taking away healthcare and it's discrimination. And it's like, no, I think it's discrimination to cut off a girl's breasts when she's 14 because she can't consent. That's discrimination. That's unlawful. That's child abuse. So she also explains in this clip how she believes that trans ideology has become an absolute and total and complete cult. And I happen to agree with much of what she says here, and that it has become very cult-like in nature. And I just know, just from doing episodes like this, that I will get a slew of comments saying all kinds of hateful, terrible things because I'm not adhering to the lockstep ideological format. It's especially very apparent with people who have detransitioned. They were accepted and loved and brought in to the community. And when they decided, hey, this isn't for me, I made a mistake. Oh my God, this isn't working. I'm upset about this. They are completely pushed into the corner. They're shut out of the community. They're told they're terrible and awful, and they're told that it's their fault. They victim blame these people ad nauseum. So let's take a look at what Truthful Therapist has to say about that.
Is this trans ideology a cult? I found this very interesting article from the Atlantic magazine from 2014. Let's see what they say are the 7 signs that you are in a cult. 1. Opposing critical thinking. So what happens if you start asking questions and having some critical thoughts about what the gender ideology is? It doesn't usually go so well, does it?
Nope.
Number 2, isolating members and penalizing them for leaving. So what happens to those detransitioners who decide they are no longer trans? They are shunned.
Yep.
Number 3, I'd say having a whole new language, all kinds of labels, all kinds of new forms of gender, they count as special doctrines, and outside scripture, they can be much compared.
And I did an entire episode on that too, and I'll link it in the comments below or somewhere on the screen, where I talk about all of these different labels, and people were not happy about me having any criticisms of some of these ideas and how they're being marketed and pushed at kids. I mean, there's so much evidence to suggest that it's indoctrination. It's actually pathetic at this point.
For time's sake, I'm just going to skip to number 5, dishonoring the family unit. They are tearing kids away from their parents, and is the saddest part of all of this.
And that is 100% true. You are seeing even laws being put in place in places like, I think it's Colorado, where if you misgender your kid or something, you can get them taken away. Or if you don't affirm them, you can get your kid taken away. It's just absolutely insane. They're actually stripping parents of their parental rights over trans ideology.
Okay, we're gay, but we're in Barnes & Nobles, and there's a kids book section, a gay kids book section, and this shit is crazy. Look at this. Okay, there's the gay VCs, right? Bye-bye binary. Bye-bye binary with a mohawk on a baby.
Bye-bye binary. So there you go right there. I don't even need to say anything else. They're trying to tell young people that there is not a binary, right? And that you don't have to adhere by the binary, and that there's more than 2 sexes and that sort of thing. Like that's what I'm getting from that. It's just the title. I don't know what's in the book, but I would go out on a limb and say that that's pretty much the gist of that one.
Gay VCs, you're not ready. Hold this. Okay. What? A is for arrow and ace. B is for bi. This is crazy. We're gay, but this is crazy. What? For a baby?
Did you see that? The ABCs, it was like B is for bi, C is for coming out, D is for drag. I'm going to look that up and see what the age range recommendation is for that, because I'm very curious. So according to Amazon, this book is for ages 2 and up, and I'm going to read you a little bit of the description here. It says from A is for ally to F is for family to Q is for queer. The author's playful illustrations and lively, inclusive poems feature a glossary in the back, which offers opportunity for future discussion of terms and identities. Yeah, because that's real important for 2-year-olds to know and understand, because that should be the priority for teaching right now, is talking about sexuality and gender identity, as if these things need to be discovered when you are in preschool. Absolutely freaking ridiculous. And this is why people are pissed. This is why people are pissed, because they see this stuff happening around them and they're gaslit all the time. They're told, no, that's not what it is. You're just a bigot. You're just a bad person. You're just not open-minded enough. It's like, no. You have slowly snuck in all this crap that wasn't necessary, and it makes the LGBT people of the world look awful. They should have just stayed away from the kids. And I will never understand why they felt they had to continue to do this other than money. That's the only thing I can think of. Money and control and power, and dare I say, PDF files, because the more I read about this, the more I study it, the more I research it, the more people that I talk to, the less convinced I am that this was completely innocent. So now we're going to take a look at what the White House is saying about all this, and they kind of go over a lot of the hospitals that are either pausing or completely getting rid of this care and why they're getting rid of it. And it mostly centers around the fact that they're no longer being federally funded and they can't continue on. And you would think that if it was completely innocent and it was totally necessary, that they would find ways to continue doing this, right? But they have not. And I think it's because they're actually getting really scared. You would think that Human Rights Campaign and GLAAD and the Trevor Project, that they would step up to the plate and help out these hospitals with all this life-saving care that's apparently needed, right? Wrong.
I want to backtrack to the hospitals that have stopped providing transgender surgeries and hormones for kids. On this front, does that have anything to do with the DOJ's subpoenas last week? Should we expect any more hospitals be shutting down their programs? And I wanted to also ask what you make of all these media reports, especially the AP, which I noticed, which portrays these children as losing something that's saving their lives.
Yes, I think the president spoke a lot about this issue, which is a political issue, but also really a cultural issue that impacts children.
I just want to stop it for a second and say that it's a political issue because trans rights activists made it a political issue, and they pushed this off a cliff. That was them that did this, okay? That's who made it political first. That's why it stayed in the political sphere, and it's become what it has.
And families, he talked about it a lot on the campaign, and I think he was quite surprised by the uptick we were seeing in the embracement by the Democrat Party when it comes to the chemical castration and mutilation of young innocent bodies. And so the president made it a very early priority to sign very strong executive orders to cut off the funding for any hospital or any medical facility in this country that provides such barbaric procedures. And as a result of that strong policy and the president's strong common sense position on this issue, we've had such an overwhelming response, which is great for children in Arizona. Phoenix Children's Hospital has stopped providing puberty blockers and hormone therapy to minors. In California, Stanford Medicine ended sex change surgeries for minors. Children's Hospital Los Angeles is closing its Center for Trans Youth Health and Development surgical program. In Illinois, Lurie Children's Hospital Chicago stopped sex change surgeries. Again, let's think about what we're talking about here. Sex change surgeries for minors. These are barbaric practices that no innocent child should have to endure.
And that's exactly right. And the vast majority of Americans are on board with this.
Why is the Department of Justice investigating children's hospitals? The FBI has announced that they're investigating three major ones: Boston Children's, Children's Hospital Colorado, and Children's Hospital Los Angeles. The reason? These hospitals are accused of performing irreversible gender-affirming surgeries on kids, possibly breaking federal laws.
They're all going down, and this is why everybody's running and scattering and just shutting down their clinics. This is why everybody's running away, and they've just stopped giving these surgeries abruptly because the cat is out of the bag, and it's no longer just people like me talking on the internet. And it's becoming very real for these people. And I think the fact that they were so emboldened to do this to young people to begin with and call it care and call it affirmation. I mean, it's everything they do now is like this manipulation of words. If it sounds good, then it's good. And really, it's like the opposite of care. Again, I don't know how to emphasize this enough that kids can't consent, and this is an adult decision that you make later in your life. What about this is so difficult? I'll never understand. I'll never understand why there was no common sense applied in this situation. And when people did apply common sense to it, they were told to sit down and shut up, and they're a terrible person, and they're mean, and they just don't understand. How awful. And how awful for detransitioners. If it wasn't for organizations like Gays Against Groomers, if it wasn't for people like Buck Angel, if it wasn't for detransitioners coming out and speaking on this topic, it took all these conservatives to come and start talking about it. And they say, oh, that's because they're just so hateful and they hate LGBT. No, that's not it. It's actually because it was the only place that people like Chloe Cole could get platformed. was the only place that it was allowed. Mainstream media, CNN, you didn't see them talking about it. PBS, NPR, none of these organizations, none of these platforms, these major platforms were allowing detransitioners to come and talk. Because remember, guys, it started out that young people were not getting surgeries, right? We were gaslit and told, no, that they're not getting surgeries. What are you talking about? That's just a made up conservative propaganda lie. And then it was, oh no, there's a few getting surgeries, but it's not that many. It's not that big of a deal. It's only a few, only a handful of people as that happened to. It's only like Jazz Jennings. And then it was, shut up. I don't want to hear about it. This is care that it is life-saving, and these children need this. So they've been lying to us this entire time, all the way through the progression of this. So another thing that I really wanted to touch on quickly too was the use of puberty blockers and kind of just a high level overview of what is going on with those exactly, and that really we don't know much about it, number one, and number two, what we do know about it is very dangerous. Take a look at this clip.
So the term puberty blocking or puberty blockers really shouldn't be used. It's not accurate. There's no way to block puberty with medications or with anything. We've been told by various organizations, including prominent medical groups, that you can pause puberty, giving the child time to think about what gender they want to be, that they're reversible and they're harmless. It's just not true. The brain does not grow as one unit. There are certain sections that do not complete maturation until even into young adulthood, mid-20s. We do know that some of the last areas to mature are the frontal cortex, involved in executive function, making decisions. There are things that need to happen in sequence, hormones that have to be introduced that help with brain development, bone development, muscle development, coordination. If we stop those, we don't know what that does.
They've been telling kids at 14, hey, do you think you're going to want to have kids? Because you may not be able to have kids. And then, of course, at 14, what child is going to be like, oh, yeah, I want to have children? No child at 14 knows if they want to have kids or not because they're 14. Okay. And that should be a clear indicator right there that this is a completely inappropriate, unlawful, criminal practice, in my opinion. It's destroying the LGBT community. And I still can't get past the idea that this was perhaps done on purpose. I really struggle with that. And you also have social media influencers like Lily Tino out there giving advice like this.
When a kid tells you that they're transgender, believe them. A lot of people will say that it's impossible for a 4-year-old to know if they're trans.
If a 4-year-old comes up to you and tells you they are trans, it's because they're being indoctrinated. And you shouldn't believe them because children's brains aren't even 90% developed until the age of 5. This man's justification is that children are great at telling adults what they want. As a former pre-K teacher, as a former special education teacher, this man has clearly never been around children, nor does he know anything about child development. Most children around 4 years old are working on social emotional regulation to communicate their wants and needs in stressful situations. There's no way a 4-year-old is going to know that they are transgender. This man uses the example that what if a 4-year-old boy says they don't like to wear boy clothes? What if that 4-year-old doesn't like the texture of their clothes?
I mean, seriously, this whole thing was based off of stereotypes. And it used to be, the message in the community was don't stereotype me, don't label me, and all of that. And it went from that to, Vicky likes to wear baseball caps and boyish clothes sometimes, so maybe she's trans. And by the way, there's people that have come on my channel to try to insult me and say that I should transition because I look like a guy. Which I find fascinating because these are the same people that are supposedly on the side of trans identities and all that. And it's so happy and it's so wonderful. But then they turn around and use it as an insult against certain people. I just find that absolutely fascinating.
What if that 4-year-old just doesn't like the outfit? What if that 4-year-old just wants to express some autonomy and control and then next week they want to wear boy clothes? Sir, you need to stay in your lane. And your lane is not educating teachers or parents about whether or not to believe if their 4-year-old child is trans. They want to say the far right is trying to indoctrinate us. Like, dude, be so for...
So I'm really happy to see this stuff start to get rolled back and be exposed for what it is. I was concerned for a little bit there that it wasn't going to be taken far enough to show the world what's really happening with gender affirming care. That model needs to go all together and be be replaced with something different that does not involve anyone under the age of 18. There are some people that go as far as to say that it should actually be age 25, and that is debatable because people are not fully developed in the brain until the age of 25, but I'm going to go with 18 for now. But you know what? There's probably going to be a lot more to come on that when we actually do have an opportunity to study this instead of pushing it down everybody's throat. So guys, let me know in the comments what you think. And, do you believe that gender affirming care for minors should be outlawed in the United States? Do you believe we need to be doing more research to understand what this is all about to begin with? Do we care? Do we think this is even a real thing? I know people that don't even believe that being transsexual is a real thing. And I would be very cautious, even as an adult, going through something like this. And I really do believe that Big Pharma has played a role in the grift here, and they saw opportunity to push young people into the medical system, and it keeps you in the system forever, either because you need to continue to get surgeries, you have complications, you have issues there, you are going to be on hormones your entire life, and it was very marketable for people, and it became trendy, which is so scary and dangerous. But anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.